Hey, how's it going? It's Keith Townsend, principal of the CTO Advisor. And over here on the other screen, we have Bobby Allen. Uh, we'll talk about where he's at in a second. But first, Bobby, some big news hit in the essence talking about where people are going.
Oh yeah.
Pat Gelsinger is headed over to Intel.
hmm Yeah, this was huge, Keith. I mean, I think so. I'm a former Intel guy for those on the program that don't know. I was actually an Intel fellow. My wife and I were both Intel fellows at University of Michigan, meaning Intel paid for both of us to go to grad school there. And then I lived in Oregon for a while, and so I actually coincided with some of the time when Pat was there. And honestly, when Intel and Pat parted ways, it always felt wrong
Hmm.
because Pat was always kind of considered the heir apparent. So for those who don't know the structure of Intel, a lot of the senior level executives had what they called a TA, a technical assistant. Pat was the technical assistant to Andy Grove back in the day, right? It was always he was the first CTO of Intel, very well respected in the community. It just felt like, man, this is the guy that's going to take the reins and bring Intel into the future. And so this is really very much like a homecoming. I can imagine for the folks inside of Intel, this just feels right. And this feels like the guy that's going to help them right the ship and kind of get back on track as we're into kind of a new season now.
So, a provocative question. Do you think Intel's ship could be righted? I mean, obviously, Pat is not going to stake his reputation and go somewhere where he doesn't think that he can impact the org. But do
Mhm.
you think Intel can kind of fix this?
I do. I do think the ship can be righted. I think that Pat is going to make a lot of changes. There could be acquisitions. I'm certainly expecting us going to be reorgs and new leadership. I mean, Intel has prowess in manufacturing, supply chain management, things that are very adjacent to technology. And Pat has a vision that's big enough, and Intel's got a big enough pocketbook to try out some of those bets. So I do think they can right the ship. To be honest, Keith, this is not going to be something that's overnight because they've had some things that they've been stumbling on in terms of manufacturing processes changing over. It's going to take a couple years. I think people need to be patient with Pat, but I think he's got the vision and he's got the street cred with the engineers and the folks at Intel that I think he's going to get it done.
So I'm a big bullish on Intel in general. They sponsored the CTO Advisor hybrid infrastructure, and I think I like the overall strategy moving forward. I think they have a very solid strategy. It's about execution. If Pat proved anything, he can do both strategy and execution. He pulled VMware kind of out the teeth of
Yeah,
AWS and built a juggernaut there.
I agree. I
So
agree.
let's talk about what's really important. A couple of years ago, I teased the "Where's Keith going?" and you helped me with that. It's
Mhm.
been about a few weeks since I last had you on the program. We teased that you're no longer at Cloudgenera. You are now the what at where.
So, Keith, thanks for having me back on the program. Yes, I'm no longer at Cloudgenera. Much respect to the folks over there. Just want to say for those of your listeners, I want to make this point briefly. I did not leave a toxic environment. And especially when you're an underrepresented group in cloud, it's important to say that I didn't leave something that was on fire. A lot of respect for the folks over there. But I moved on to something that I think is different and a different growth opportunity. So I landed at a large mature startup called Turbonomic. I'm now the vice president of strategic alliances, and my core focus is actually AWS.
So first off, congratulations.
Thank you.
VP of Strategic Alliances at Turbonomics
hmm
with a focus on AWS. So
hmm
let's unpack that a little bit because there's a lot there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Turbonomics, formerly known as VM Turbo,
hmm
extremely aligned with VMware community.
hmm
They provided a lot of telemetry data and not just telemetry data, but spending data, et cetera. It was directly aligned to that. So the ability to kind of optimize your VMware environment was the original value prop of VM Turbo.
hmm
They've kind of since pivoted and said, you know what, it's not just about VMware, it's about the entire cloud movement. Turbonomics is the new brand, or not so new. It's been a few years now, probably about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Turbonomics is the new brand. Obviously, AWS is the juggernaut in this space. And you're VP of Strategic Alliances. Tell me,
Mm-hmm.
what's the strategic relationship between Turbonomics and AWS?
So there'll be some things that are going to continue coming out over the next year. Some videos we've shot, some things we're doing together. Really, what it means is my job is to align a lot of the different organizations within Turbonomic, engineering, the product team, the engineering team, the marketing team, to make sure that we're aligned to a lot of the different things that Amazon is doing. And AWS, as we've talked about before, has tons of different options that are out there. And what's the synergy that we've seen between our executives and AWS executives is what they're embracing, Keith, is this term that we've coined, automating innovation. Because the way that I would argue, we introduced the term confusion as a service before.
You're right.
And I think the way that you address confusion as a service is by automating innovation as much as possible, where someone can kind of realign you. So let me unpack that a little bit. Part of my evolution, Keith, it's interesting when you pursue a new job in a pandemic, you do some soul searching, not just what I want to do when I grow up, but why. So I had to think about, like, what does this next move look like? And part of what I thought about is, um, where do I think the puck is going, to use the Wayne Gretzky analogy? And I think part of it comes back to, I'll give this thought for your audience, Keith. I think we're confusing self-service with self-help, because cloud is really big on self-service. That's, can I do it on my own? But self-help is, can I be effective on my own? And I would argue that because there's so many options out there, we cannot be effective in choosing in this myriad of options what the right thing to do is. So what Amazon is embracing is Turbonomic is the best way to realign my application to the latest and greatest things that are out there. We automatically do that. So if your app would run better on GP3 storage or IO2 or a different type of VM or a different configuration in RDS, we automatically do that for you. And so what people like is, don't just give me a recommendation, do it for me and free up my mind to work on the next problem.
So there was a lot of debate on this when Turbonomic was focused in the VMware landscape. The team kind of did the same thing where, and there was a lot of debate. Should Turbonomic automatically make recommended changes,
Mhm.
or should they just recommend the changes and then you go out and implement? I think one of the practical problems we saw out of the VMware world is that no one actually went back and made the recommended changes. The,
Mhm.
the system has to be automated.
Yeah.
But there was a huge issue of behind trust. Like, why should I trust Turbonomic to make those changes?
Yeah.
And even more so when we talk about custom written applications for the AWS landscape, when you're talking about which storage platform should I be on,
Mhm.
and these infrastructure as a service constructs that meld with applications and APIs directly.
Mhm.
How do you guys build trust with developers and DevOps teams that your recommendations should kind of be automated?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Keith. The trust part is interesting because what people like about Turbonomic is that we're making those decisions based on performance. So the bedrock of what we're doing is to make sure that we are ensuring the right resources are given to the right applications, so nobody starves and nobody's picking out, right? Because most applications you're going to have, if you think about Thanksgiving dinner, if the 2-year-old at the table got the big piece of chicken, we got a problem. And that's what's happening in a lot of enterprises, right? The little baby application is getting the big piece of computer, the big piece of storage, and then the 16-year-old teenagers getting a little itty bitty piece of resources. Turbonomic fixes all of that. But because we start with performance, Keith, not with pricing, some of the other vendors out there are going to look at pricing or look at stuff on paper. We're looking at actual performance metrics of what the applications are using. And then because of that, we're earning that trust to make it happen. We do POVs and POCs or whatever else is necessary in the environment, but typically in less than 30 days, we earn the trust of the organization. They see the actions that we can take proactively. They see that it's based on trust. And honestly, Keith, here's the other part of it, right? I've evolved my thinking in terms of what the real issue is in cloud. I used to think the gap was between information and insight. I don't know what to do. The real gap, Keith, in my opinion, is between intent and execution.
Hmm.
Even if I know what to do I have time to do it? And the answer for the most part has been no, right? What most people are seeing where they're leaning in, Keith, and we've had some monstrous cloud deals in the past year or so, right? People are really embracing the Turbonomics automation helps them free their minds up for other problems because what they're seeing is even if I know what I need to realign, I don't have time to do it. I don't have time to explore the options. They've got to consider automation to free them up, even if it's in their heart to turn things off or spin things down or size things up or whatever. They just don't have the time. And so, what I think about, Keith, is when we talk about things being hard in the cloud, I want to make sure that we're embracing better vocabulary and better conversations this year. Like, what kind of hard are we talking about? Are things hard because we haven't had time to do it or because we haven't had time to think about it? If
So
we
let's
know what
talk
to do,
about
can we do it?
so let's talk about risk mitigation because
Yeah.
something that you've said in the past has always stuck with me, which was you can't give to the effect. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. You can't give unlimited resources to apps with limited financial upside.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I can't simply point Turbonomics at my entire landscape and just say, make it the best performance. Sometimes I don't care about performance. Cost optimization is sometimes an issue, but more importantly, I don't want a undifferentiated application eating up more cost than what it is. So yes, it would be great if it performed awesome. But if I don't
Mhm.
need the results for if I won't use the results for 2 or 3 days, why
Mhm.
spend the most amount of money to get the results? How do you guys balance that? Because I know Turbonomics primary use isn't cost optimization, but cost
Correct.
is a factor.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, Keith. So here's what I would say. I would say the focus is performance, but the outcomes of ensuring performance are that we help your people, your pocketbook, and the planet. Let me unpack that. So we focus on performance, we help your people because you don't have engineers and architects that are constantly having to pull reports about resizing, right sizing, deprovision, and that type of thing. Because the reality, Keith, is that applications are not static, right? Depending on what's happening in your business, there are whether it's performance review time and then your internal HR app is getting hit, whether it's a retail customer or retail business and Black Friday is coming, applications are moving all the time. So if I'm automating the demand and allocation of resources based on what applications need, I'm freeing up people to focus on more interesting problems. I will often free up money, right? Pocketbook, but then I'm also helping the planet because I'm reducing electricity and reducing waste. What ends up happening is I am uh I'm automating the stuff that I can keep to free my people up to have the better conversation. So again, performance is the goal. The other things I talked about are outcomes as you do the goal. So here's how I say it to kind of wrap it up. You may not save money, but you will not waste money, if that makes sense. We're going to ensure that you're not wasting resources. And because most of us are in the cloud environment, the outcomes are likely freeing up time, freeing up money, and helping the planet.
Well, Bobby, I really appreciate you, holding back and not updating your LinkedIn. Although that caused my team a little consternation when they went to go create your profile on the web page. They were like, "What do you mean he's no longer the CTO of Cloudgenera?"
Yeah.
That's what his LinkedIn says. Now you can go and update your LinkedIn profile and let the world know that you're at Turbonomics, VP of Strategic Alliances, focused on AWS. That's a big title inside of a bigger organization
Mhm.
inside of our overall ecosystem. I'm excited to see what you and the team at Turbonomic does. For those who want to follow you on the web, where can they stalk you?
So they can find me at bobbyjallen.me. That's my personal website, turbonomic.com for our company. And then you can follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn at ballen underscore CLT. Think Ballin in Charlotte, representing Silicon South, helping get Charlotte on the map as a destination for tech talent.
And as always, you can find me on the web. TheCTOadvisor.com is the brand new web page. We've spent a lot of time and resources bringing that up. I hope you like it. And of course, on Twitter at CTO Advisor. Talk to you next, CTO Dose.